Anyway, we're going to talk World of Warcraft. We're going to be playing it since realms are up and running. But first, yeah, I did at least want to just kind of sit and talk and chat about the possibility of when. I want to go back to that conversation again of when will the new expansion release? Because there's something that I haven't really talked about because Copium just does not let me talk about this. I've been in denial about it, but I should have an open mind. I should be open for other ideas and other such things like, oh, maybe the game will shut down. Another possibility that I haven't really mentioned is, well, what if it comes out early? What if this coming 10.2 patch is the conclusion of the Dragonflight story? Like villain wise, who we got? We got a Ridcron who just kind of yeeted out to avoid, to the void place, whatever. We don't know where he's at. We got Farak, who's been burning up the Azure Span and the Anaran Plains with great diligence. Good for him. And then we have Azeroth, who we don't really know what's going on, but I have a feeling that by the time October 31st comes along, we're going to get to know her a lot more. There's a cutscene I haven't even seen yet in game. I'm terrible. I haven't even looked at spoilers about it yet. So I have a feeling we're going to see a lot more development between Viranath and Alexstrasza because I guess they're supposed to be friends. We're gonna see it in the book. But 10.2, if I were to make some broad assumptions, if I were to just kind of make up a narrative, 10.2 might conclude with the defeat of at least Farak, because Farak is like, he's full heal, right? Viranath is there, but there could be a more sympathetic side to her that will result in her becoming, joining the forces of Azeroth, becoming a good guy girl, or she'll get killed in some other method. Or she might be part of another raid encounter and she might be killed too. That could very much happen. Two big dragon raid bosses. Ooh, nasty. But it could happen. Let's say both of them are defeated or they're otherwise taken out of the fight. Then who's left? What could be left is, Aridicron, him leaving and going back to the void. He'd be like, "Oh yeah, I was just there for a little while. I'm back now." What, you thought I was just gonna leave until a couple of years from now? Heck no, that's possible. He might come back and that might be like 10.3 content. But I'm wondering to myself, I'm coping to myself, the WoW team has learned from Sylvanas' kind of story arc. Now, for those of you who remember, patch 8.2.5 was no raid, no warfront or whatever they were called, I forget. Nothing crazy happened, just like a little bit of questing and a grand cinematic of Sarafang being defeated by Sylvanas. Sylvanas smokes him, then she leaves. Off I go, cretins, and then she was back like a patch later. Well, the patch after 8.2, hey, I'm back, bringing in the thunder. So she was only gone for like that long before the events of Shadowlands took place. And I've long have said it could have waited. That could have been put on the shelf. She could have been off in the Shadowlands doing her machinations and all that stuff, planning things, going through her training montage, her room of space and time thing while she was learning the ways of the shadow stuff, forging her armor, learning how to make legendaries, that sort of thing, before returning to the Shadowlands. And in the meantime, we could have gone through another kind of expansion. We could have gone through Dragonflight, before Shadowlands, with the way like time, with how time was going by. Could have been something like that. There could have been like this kind of lull period before the sky, the freaking sky cracks open and everything. Obviously, that's not how it worked out. But I want to I'm telling myself that maybe the WoW team is learning their lesson. Maybe the narrative team is learning the lesson that they don't need to like rush into this so much. I mean, they managed to do it with Xalatath. That knife had its appearance, during patch 8.1 One, let's go further back. It had its origins back in Legion times, and it was, it had its own history written in and everything. And then we revisited a little bit during BFA. It was a no-show during Shadowlands. So far it's made a cameo appearance in Dragonflight. What's to say that there won't be a grand entrance, a grand reveal of this, in 11.0? So I want to tell myself that a story like that, it can wait. Now Ericron is over in his void space and time kind of hyperbolic chamber sort of thing. Maybe that story can just kind of hold off until like a little bit later. And in the meantime, we can go off and do pirate stuff. We can do maybe a separate Void and Light story. Because that kind of sounds plausible too, but I'm not gonna get into that. I'm not gonna get into that too much. But merely the possibility of 11.0 could come earlier than next November, because that's what I've been sitting on for quite some time. Hey, here's the timeline. Here's how this patch will work. Here's how this patch will work. What content will we probably encounter, and other such things. But what if, right? I can kind of see 10.2 being kind of the conclusion of the Dragonflight story. So that would come out maybe in November-ish or so. And then come 10.2.5, that's when we'll get the bonus season. Whatever the case, we're going to have 10.2, 10.2.5 last until about July, August of 2024. And then we get 11.0. So we're going to get it like a couple months in advance. So we lose a raid tier. We lose a season. But is that the end of the world? A lot of folks would be like, hell yeah, it's the end of the world, because there's so much Dragonflight. There's so many stories that could still be told in Dragonflight. And yeah, you're right. But what if it's not? What if it's more like, hey, let's just kind of take it easy. Let's let the story end here. We'll move on. It doesn't have to move on to like some world-ending thing, but we can move on to like something else. Go to a new land. Go to a new place. Have a mini world revamp and do some story stuff over on that side. I'm kind of giving fuel for leak season people to to explore other possibilities, to be like, oh, no one's thought of that one yet. Maybe this is real. So 10.2 in November, 10.2.5 around this, spring, late spring, something like that. And then we have a shorter bonus season where we have, I don't know if they're going to be called faded raids or whatever, but the equivalent of faded raids, where we go through the greatest hits, we do another new dungeon or something like that, and then all the previous raids we could all redo, and now there's some weird wonky effect, and I would think it's something that's to do with like time stuff or dream related stuff or elemental stuff. I don't know. Part of the other reason why this is even a remote possibility is to return to a previous consistency. Now, modern WoW, as I call it, this is a made up. I'm making up this era, but I think folks would be in some agreement with me. Modern WoW began with Legion. WoW with Seasons definitely began with Battle for Azeroth. But I lump those two together. Legion BFA is kind of like sort of the same era, with borrowed power, I guess. And those two expansions launched in August, if I'm recalling this correctly, around the August time frame, late summer, basically. And then things happened. Shadowlands came out 5 or so months after. 5 or so months later. It was not delayed, but okay, yeah, sure, it was delayed. I'm thinking to myself, might the WoW team be trying to go back to the previous consistency? Because after the August releases of Legion and BFA, we had a November release of Shadowlands. It should have been October-ish or so, but it ended up getting pushed back to November. And then fitting that 2-year expansion period, Dragonflight came out in November as well. Now, again, lots of copium here. Shadowlands had a difficult development cycle. They were adjusting to things things were tough, things were cut, so we had a kind of a smaller expansion still within that 2 year period. Now with Dragonflight, is it possible, the question is it possible to have like this shorter expansion? I mean, it's still pretty filled with, it was definitely filled with things to do, but are we going to have this kind of shorter story expansion mostly in an effort to realign that sort of time, the release timeline back to August? I don't know. Probably not. But I at least want to kind of introduce that thought into people's heads. The possibility, and also to, let you folks ask yourselves, would it be reasonable? Would 10.2 and the tree and, having like Farok and Varanoth left while Aridikron is off doing his whole training montage, is that an appropriate place to draw a conclusion to the Dragonflight story? My initial thought is nah, not really, because while those stories are still going on, there's still kind of that overarching story of, of the aspects trying to get back their aspectral powers and resolving like all the different stories of each flight, which we're getting really close to. But I feel like there's got to be a better payoff for it too. This is kind of dumb. I'm like making this video, well, what if? But then by the end of it, I'm like, nah, probably not. But whatever. It would be a more fitting end to have a kind of concluding thing with the aspects being like, okay, yes, there's this grand ceremonious thing where we have our powers back, yeah, and then now we are fighting against a big thing. Maybe it's still going to be Farok. For all we know, sure, Farok is going to attack during 10.2. He might be defeated, pushed back, but he might not be the actual like boss that's killed. It might be Varanoth that ends up getting killed. Maybe Farok's like, I'm gonna get away, and Varanoth's, oh, we need you. You're the spear of whatever. You're the aggressor person. I'm just gonna help you out and defend you while you get away, something like that. And then she gets killed, and she and Alexstrasza have a tender moment. I don't know, because remember, what's his name? Farok, he sucked up that shadow flame juice, so he's all sorts of like loped up. He's like, ooh, he got the taste of that void stuff, and he's like, I like it, So Farok could be the final boss of this particular expansion, while Aridikron is like, yeah, I'm gonna be, good job, dude. You ate the shadow flame stuff, but I'm taking that pure uncut void stuff. This is potent. Sorry, these things are just fun to talk about, think about. That's the kind of energy that I try to bring to this sort of stuff. I'm definitely going to be wrong on 98% of this stuff, but it's always fun to talk about these things.